Okay, we are going to talk about bias in the media today. And when you're investigating bias, the first thing that you need to do is you need to be able to define the word bias or biased. And bias is really just a fancy word for opinion. When we're looking at a biased opinion, the definition in the dictionary is actually bias is a concern with or interest in one thing more than another. And so if you could just write this definition into your Sparrow notebook, I would even pause this film real quick so that you can just jot it down and have that definition of bias or biased. Once you've completed writing this definition into your spiral, it's important for us to look at examples of bias in the news so that you really get an idea of what you're looking for when you're looking for a biased article. So I'm going to use an example of a KCCI article that was written about the Hawks and Jaguars game the other day. And the actual title was this: Ankeny High football game pits student against student. And when I look at that and then I look at the definition of bias, the concern with or interest in one thing more than the other, what I see is that this article title itself looks at bias and biased opinion. It's biased because it's the author's opinion. It's not a proven fact. And when I investigated the article further, I found that the author actually didn't even talk about whether or not students were enjoying the game together as a group. Instead, the article focused only on students being pitted against one another, just like the title said. So when I read through the article, I saw that it didn't give all perspectives, it didn't give all sides of the story, and instead it just focused on the students and how they handled the game. Reading through the article, I saw that this guy, Noel Fiscus, stated this in the article. I think there's some trash talking going on. He's the father of a Jaguar, and when I look at this, again, I see that this author chose to only focus on maybe the negatives of the game instead of the positives, because I'm sure there were a lot of people at the game who were getting along just fine. However, this article framed it in a sense of they weren't getting along, and that the Jags and Hawks were being pitted against one another and a rivalry was being created instead of a one community perspective. So your task today is to look at 3 different articles, and each article deals with school uniforms. These 8 articles may or may not be biased. I purposely chose them so that you had to investigate their bias or not, and it's really up to you to decide whether or not the article is biased. The whole directions of this is I would write down in your Spiral notebook these 3 questions. What's the title and author of the article you're responding to? What leads you to believe this article is or isn't biased? And list at least 2 pieces of text evidence to prove whether or not this article is biased. After you wrote down the text evidence, I need you to explain why and how this text evidence proves the article is or is not biased, because the why or the how is really the selling point for me. You may or may not think the article is biased, and if you can explain it with text evidence and then explain how your text evidence proves this, you'll get the question right. Again, remember, global studies is not about right answers, it's about justifying your answers. And I know this seems like a lot of writing to put in your spiral, but just go ahead and pause the film for a second and then write it down and then restart it, and I'll explain the next part. As you continue, just remember that you're going to be looking at each article, and so you're actually going to be answering these 3 questions 3 times. Some of you may want to do this in a graph form where maybe you want to create 3 columns for the 3 different articles that you're responding to. Just make sure that you answer these 3 questions for each of the 3 articles that you're looking at on school uniforms. After you've done all of this, what you're going to do is you're going to find a partner. I don't care who the partner is, and you're going to discuss the following question. Can a biased article still be used for research? Why or why not? Again, you're responding to this question, answering yes or no, but you need to give that justification. So discuss with your partner whether biased articles can be used for research or not, because that's really the key here, is us trying to figure out if we can use biased articles or not in our research. If you have questions, let me know, but I would recommend that you re-listen to the directions before you ask a teacher questions. And also you have your student friends in class that you could ask them questions before you come to me. Thanks.